Hi, Claudia here from Create with Claudia. Thanks so much for stopping by. Today I'm going to be showing you a quilt block I designed based on this quilt here. This is called Roquefort, like the blue cheese. It sort of reminds me of that. If you know my work, you know that in 2021 I am an Island Batik ambassador, and each month we have a challenge. And for March it was a scrap quilt, which is my favorite kind of quilt, as you know. So this was right up my alley. This quilt is made up of 47, I think it's 45 or 47 different blues, and the solid black, Island Batik black. It's made up of a lot of the blues from the Starry Night collection, which just hit stores in February of 2021. It's designed by Kathy Engel. It's beautiful, all sorts of blues from light to dark. But I also threw in a bunch, as part of my ambassador program, I got a box full of fabric. And they also gave me these small rolls called Stash Builders. And as luck would have it, they were all in blue. So I could really jazz up this scrap quilt and put more scraps in it. I love this quilt. I love the ombre effect from the center out and then going back out to the light in the outside. And I really love the black solid. Before I became an ambassador, I had not used Island Batik solids. They are a dream to work with, and this black is such a saturated dark black. It's really, really nice if you want to do a black quilt, or a black fabric in your quilt, excuse me. For the batting in this quilt, I used Hobbs Batting. It's black, and I really think it makes those colors really pop. I enjoyed working with the black batting. I used Aurifil Thread. I used a dark gray called, I think it's Gray Smoke or Dark Smoke. And then I used, for all of the pieces, and you'll see that over my blog, I used the Accuquilt Go to cut every single piece in this quilt. That includes all of the triangles for the half square triangles and all of the squares. In my machine, I use Schmetz Needles on this one. So thank you to Island Batik, Schmetz Needles, Accuquilt Go, Aurifil Thread, and Hobbs Batting for all of the materials to enable me to make this gorgeous quilt. So here's the block. This is called my Ombré quilt trip, and this is the block that was inspired by that quilt I just showed you. Here it is in a smaller one. This is my mini version. You can find both patterns over on my website, www.createwithclaudia.com. As always, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button. I always love new subscribers. Thank you so much. And I am on social media at Create with Claudia, where you can find all sorts of things that I post every day. So thanks so much for stopping by, and enjoy the video. So altogether, you're going to need 8 different fabrics, and you're going to need the following cuts of each one. And this is a scrappy block, so you don't need big pieces like a fat quarter or anything like that. You're just going to need pieces. So for the background, in this case, I'm using a black background with some threads on it, and that equates to this white here. I used white in the smaller one, and then I'm going to use black in the bigger one today. For that, you're going to need 24 squares cut 2.5 inches, okay? So of the black, or of your background fabric, 24 squares cut 2.5 inches. Of fabric A, which is the center square, you're going to need 1 square cut 2.5 inches. So that's it. This is a great scrap buster, I tell you. From fabric B, you're going to need 1 square, which needs to be pressed, but it's 1 square cut 3.5 inches. From fabric C, you're going to need 3 squares cut 3.5 inches. These two are going to be made into an hourglass unit, and I will show you how to do that. So from fabric C, 3 squares cut 3.5 inches. From fabric D, 4 squares cut 2 7/8 inches. So these are a little bit bigger than the regular squares. They're 2 7/8, and we're going to be cutting them in half on the diagonal one time. Keeping with fabric D, you need 1 square cut 3.5 inches. On to fabric E, you need 4 squares cut 2 7/8, and again, they will be cut on the diagonal for your half square triangles. So 4 squares cut 2 7/8. And from fabric E, you need 3 squares cut 3.5 inches. And again, these two, they're going to make up a hourglass unit that I'll be showing you how to make in a little bit. But so you need 3 squares cut 3.5 inches. From fabric F, you need 4 squares cut 2 7/8, and they're going to be cut on the diagonal after you cut that square. And those are for the half square triangles. And last but not least is fabric G. And again, you need 4 squares, cut 2 7/8 inches, and they'll be cut in half on the diagonal. So that's the fabric you need. It's not a lot, and you can make this as scrappy as you want. And now we're going to get started. I'm going to show you first how to make up the hourglass unit. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we're going to take up those 3.5-inch squares that you have, and you're going to pair them up as follows. 1 pair of fabric B with fabric C, 1 pair of fabric C with fabric C, and yes, that's right, 1 pair of fabric D with fabric E, and 1 pair of fabric E with fabric E. That tutorial, remember, I have that tutorial on my website, which has it written down for you and step-by-step photos too. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to pair them up. You're going to pair 1 of fabric B with 1 of fabric C and just line them up together right sides facing so they're nice and even. And then, I know it sounds weird, but you're going to pair up 2 squares of fabric C right sides together. And yes, it sounds weird, but that's correct. And then on the lighter fabric, you're going to draw a diagonal line on the back of each of the pairs. So I would not normally use pencil, but for this I am, because that way you can see it better. I would normally use a water-soluble pen. So there's one, you can see it hopefully. And then we'll do it on the other pair. Sometimes it helps if you do it before you line up the fabrics on top, but there's a little wiggle room in these hourglass units, so we're good to go. So after you do that, what you're going to do is sew a 1/4 inch down along that drawn line on each side. It's almost like we're making a half square triangle, but we're not. We're going one step further. So I'm going to take these over to my machine and sew down a 1/4 inch on each side. And I'll be right back. Okay, so here we go. Here they are sewn down the side. I used a different kind of thread. That's what was in my machine. So hopefully you can see it. Sometimes on my videos I use really light thread you can't see. But there's the drawn line, and there's my 2 seams along the side. 1/4 inch down that drawn line. So the next thing we want to do for this hourglass block is to cut these 2 in half. And you're going to need a ruler and your rotary cutter, and you're just going to line that up on the drawn line. So that drawn line you drew earlier. Cut down, I'll do the other one. All right, so then what we're going to do is press these open really quickly. I'll press to the dark. Okay, so here they are pressed open. Now we're not trimming anything yet. I'm just going to lay these out for you so you can see them. And then the next step to making the hourglass unit is we're going to pair up one of the units that's both have the same color fabric, and then one of the units that has the 2 opposite ones. And you're going to place them, well, before you do that, on the back of one of the squares. I'm going to set these aside because they're confusing. On the back of this, you're going to draw another diagonal line straight down the middle. It's probably easier to do it this way. There you go, that's your line. And then you're going to pair these up, just moving stuff out of the way here. And you're going to nest them so the seams, see how they're going the opposite direction? And you're going to line them up just like you did before, and you want to nest them. You sort of can feel around a little bit so that you don't want them overlapping because you want a nice sharp point. And I will pin here and over here. And then again, like we did before, I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch along each side of that drawn line. Okay, so I'm going to go do that with this one and then with the other one, and then I will show you the hourglass units. We'll just have to trim them down and then they'll be done. Okay, so I sewed down each side of that a 1/4 inch along each side of that drawn line, and now we're going to cut this in half, and then it's like presto magic. It's sort of like, I always think flying geese making 4 at a time is like magic. Well, this is magic too to me. I don't know, it's so funny to take a couple squares and turn them into what you'll see. So first off, we're going to get our rotary cutter and we're going to cut down that drawn line. Always make sure to close that up when you're done using it, And then we're going to cut down here. And hopefully, when we open it up, oh, we have a nice sharp point. See how that comes together? I'm going to press these open, but just so you can see it. Here we have that lighter square and then the lighter fabric and then the three little bit darker. Since this is ombre, it's a real gradual progression. And that is your your hourglass unit. I'm going to press these, show you how to trim them down next. Okay, so here they are all pressed, and what I'm going to show you, see that nice sharp point? I'm always happy when that comes out. You always like hold your breath when you open up a block like that and hoping your point comes out right. The next thing we have to do is trim all of these hourglass units down to 2.5 inches. Okay, so you're going to need your ruler, and I like the one with the diagonal. It helps me line up. And since it's 2.5 inches, you're going to figure out what half of 2.5 is. So that's 1 1/4. And you're going to find your 1 1/4 inch point on here and line it up with that center point there. So there we go. And then line up that diagonal line with your diagonal line, your diagonal seam. And then you're going to trim the one edge. And there's your first cut. There's your first corner. And then we will take the ruler again and we're going to find the 2.5 inch point right here where it meets and line up that diagonal line. Again, push down, open this up and trim. And there you have it. There's your 2.5 inch hourglass unit. So I'm going to trim up the rest. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is we have to make our half square triangles, and for that you're going to need those 2 7/8 inch squares. But for this one, we're going to cut that 2 7/8 inch square in half on the diagonal. I'm just going to show you one, and then we'll do it with the other part of this pair. Just cut it in half, and then we're just going to match those up, right sides together, and sew a 1/4 inch down that line. And this should be pretty much, if you use that real good 1/4 inch, just a teeny tiny scant 1/4 inch seam, this should be 2.5 inches. And I will bring those back when I show you. You'll have a couple of dog ears to trim off, but that's not a big deal. So let me go do those, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here you can see where I sewed it down. There's my 1/4 inch, and I pressed it open, and that's what your half square triangle is going to look like. This is with fabric D and fabric E, and then the next one that I would do would be with fabric F and fabric G. So once you have all of those done, they're trimmed down to 2.5 inches. Basically, if you haven't figured it out by now, this is each square in this quilt block is 2.5 inches. We're going to lay it out, and then we'll get ready to piece the block together. Okay, so you can see where I've started laying this out. It's going to be like a checkerboard, which is sort of fun. So you're going to start with, this is your left or whatever corner you're going to start with. And then you're going to start with your darker triangles, your darker half square triangles. You want that darkest fabric out to the outside. And here are those other pairs of half square triangles that we were talking about. Alrighty, here are all the 2.5 inch squares put together. You can see our hourglass units we made and the half square triangles. This is the layout, and up on the screen you'll see there was a layout of how to place the fabric so that you get that ombre effect. The only thing we need to do now is sew each of the rows together. So in this case I would sew each row together like so, and then sew the individual rows together. I think that would be the easiest way to do this. There are other ways you could do it. You can maybe do 4 patches at a time. Whatever you're most comfortable with when you piece this together. And then we'll be done with the block, and you can either incorporate it into a bigger quilt, or you can make this a mini. Alrighty, here's my block. It's all finished. I really like the way it turned out. Don't mind all the fuzzies on here from all the other fabric I have sitting around my studio. I love this ombre effect. I did the light in the middle and then worked my way out to the dark. Again, this is the 14.5-inch version, and then here's my 7.5-inch version. You can see the difference. You need good glasses to do that one. Let me show you without the blue behind it. This one I started with the dark in the center and worked my way out to lighter colors. Alrighty, so here's my block. It's all finished up. I really like the way it turned out. I love that ombre effect. You saw it at the beginning of the video. It's a lot of fun to make. I hope you give it a try. Let me show you again the smaller one, and you can compare the two. There's a big difference, but they're both fun to make. I hope you enjoyed this video, and do me a favor, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. I am on social media at Create with Claudia. So thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.